Welcome to this new automotive news video for Saturday, May 9th, 2026. On today's agenda, we're going to talk about Porsche, whose financial troubles are getting worse, and the brand now finds itself forced to abandon, among other things, its own electric car technologies. Next, we'll talk about an incredible new problem affecting the electric car brand Lucid. Remember, the one that was marketed as the only brand that could compete with Tesla. And to finish, we'll have two news items concerning the Stellantis group. The first one is actually good news, since Fiat is announcing price reductions on its electric models. The second one, however, is a bit less positive, because after struggling for years with reliability issues on the 1.2L PureTech and the 1.6L, the Stellantis group is now facing another reliability problem affecting the 1.5L engines, which is forcing Stellantis to recall them. Here's Saturday's topics. Hope you find the video interesting. If that's the case, as usual, I'm counting on you to show it by leaving a like, subscribing for the next videos, boosting this one if the option appears for you after liking it, and of course by leaving a comment where you share your opinion about today's news. And we'll start by talking a little about Porsche, which definitely isn't doing very well. First, I'll give you some numbers. Porsche's results for the first quarter of 2026. Don't worry, this will be quick. There are two important pieces of information to keep in mind to really understand everything that's happening at Porsche right now, and to understand why Porsche is now forced to take some really drastic measures. The first is that its profit dropped by 22% in the first quarter of 2026 with $595 million in profit. So it sounds like a lot, and it is a big amount, but compared to the years when Porsche was really independent and at its peak, for example, in 2022, it's 3 or 4 times less than in some quarters, when they sometimes made $2 billion in profit. The second important figure is the margin, which dropped to 7.1%. That's very low for a luxury car brand in the 2020s. Porsche had managed to reach almost 19%. So the brand's financial situation is quite complicated. And since it changed its CEO some time ago, Michael Letters, who is the former head of McLaren, he now has to make some pretty drastic decisions to try to limit the damage and turn things around. This will involve two things. The first is cost reduction, which means making sure that each Porsche produced costs less for the brand, so it can improve its margin. For example, this includes a new announcement that was just made. The Car IT division, which until now belonged to Porsche and was one of Porsche's 8 independent entities, will disappear. It was the division where they developed software, both for driving and for onboard infotainment in the vehicle. This division will be eliminated and reintegrated into other divisions of the Porsche group to try to eliminate redundancies and make software development less expensive. So that's the first thing. Cost reduction. The second is a refocusing on Porsche's activities. That means Porsche is letting go of, or abandoning if you prefer, all the business sectors it had invested in over the past few years, which it now considers secondary. Porsche wants to refocus on making truly sporty, truly luxurious cars. If that allows them to sell at a higher price and make more profit per car sold, even if it means selling fewer cars. For that, they announced 4 measures. The first is that they sold all their shares in the company Rimac. Rimac is a company that makes electric supercars, which, for example, bought the Bugatti brand a few weeks ago, which is another brand from the Volkswagen Group. Except that, until now, Rimac was almost half owned by Porsche, which is another brand from the Volkswagen Group, which means that Bugatti, indirectly, still belonged to Volkswagen. But now, Porsche is selling all its shares in Rimac. So Rimac Bugatti will become a separate brand completely outside of the Volkswagen Group, which, by the way, is actually quite worrying for the future of Bugatti. Because if Bugatti had produced cars as exceptional as the Chiron, the Veyron, or even the Tourbillon, which have exceptional engines, W16s, sometimes hybrid Vi16s, at the cutting edge of engine technology, you can now wonder a bit about what will happen next, since it will belong to a brand that has no expertise in combustion engines, because Rimac only makes electric cars. But, well, that's just a small detail. So, indeed, Porsche is selling Rimac. Porsche is also stopping its luxury bicycle production business. It is also shutting down Ceditech. It's a company that it had created to develop specialized software specifically designed for automotive communication. So, let's say electronic communication between the different controllers, between the various onboard computers that can be found in a car. And above all, it is completely shutting down Cellforce. Cellforce is its subsidiary that specialized in battery cells. This means there will never again be a Porsche equipped with a battery specially designed and developed by Porsche. It's quite a significant decision, which has been made for 4 main reasons. The first reason is that developing a battery factory is very expensive, especially when facing competition. The second reason is Chinese competition, which offers batteries that are much more efficient than what we can make in Europe, at much lower prices. The third reason is the electric sports car market still hasn't taken off. Nobody cares about it. And the fourth reason, which is somewhat related to the third, is that Porsche has reinvested massively in 2025 in the development of combustion engines and gas-powered cars, which is precisely the business sector it wants to refocus on. offering its customers gas-powered or hybrid sports cars. For all these reasons, Porsche no longer needs Cellforce, and anyway, if it wants to keep making electric cars, it can get supplies from suppliers who already make their own batteries. Since we're talking about electric cars, you should know things are complicated at Lucid. Lucid has always struggled and has never made its automotive business profitable. And this new problem affecting the brand isn't going to make things any better. At Lucid, up until 2025, they only sold one model, the Lucid Air, a fairly high-end electric sedan that the brand has never managed to make profitable. That means every time they sold a Lucid Air, they lost money. To fix this problem, since mid-2025, they've been selling the Lucid Gravity. It was a slightly lower-end SUV on which it was finally possible to make a profit. Except that just a few months after delivering the first units, Lucid stopped production of the Gravity, for the simple reason that this model is affected by a major safety issue, a problem that concerns the passenger seats. On the first units, the rear seats weren't properly secured. So, in an accident, passengers could be thrown across the vehicle without restraint. So it's a major safety issue that forced Lucid to temporarily suspend sales of its Gravity until the problem was found and fixed on future units. So already, it's quite a big blow for them because this production halt, even if temporary, will clearly prevent them from reaching their annual targets. They were supposed to reach 26,000 units this year, but they've only sold 3,000 in the first quarter. I'll let you do the math. But 3,000 times 4 quarters is still very far from 25,000. And above all, Lucid had to spend money to recall the 4,400 units of the Gravity sold between mid-2025 and early 2026 just to repair them and check that the fastenings are good. As a result, first, Lucid didn't make any money. They didn't improve their margin. And second, in reality, they actually lost a lot of money. Almost by comparison, Porsche are small players who complain about having made only $590 million. At Lucid, in the first quarter, they lost $1 billion. And above all, they've lost the trust of investors since Lucid's stock market value dropped by about 60% over the first 5 months of 2026. 75% if we zoom out over the last 12 months, and it has lost almost 99% of its value over the past 5 years. The company's value has been divided by 100 in about 4 years. Finally, as mentioned, we have 2 news items about Stellantis. The first one is actually good news overall. We won't complain about lower car prices because indeed, Fiat is announcing discounts for its electric 500, which it has had a hard time selling. Since the car is completely outdated in terms of range compared to, let's say, a latest generation electric car, it only offers 190 kilometers of WLTP range. Fiat is introducing a series of discounts that bring the car's entry-level price down from 28,000 euros to 13,900. That's almost cut in half. Actually, even more than cut in half. These discounts already include the government incentive for buying an electric car, a 1,000 euro bonus for scrapping a vehicle over 10 years old, and a 7,900 euro discount from Fiat. Altogether, the Fiat 500e starts at 13,900 euros, which is much more reasonable for an electric car with a range barely enough to get from the living room to the kitchen. There are other discounts on electric cars that have also been announced for the Grande Panda, which, with the same incentives, also starts at 13,900 euros in the lineup. So it's hard to understand who would prefer to buy a 500 knowing that the Grande Panda has double the range at 320 kilometers and the 600 electric, which with about the same discounts, now comes in at 19,900 euros. So big price reductions on electric models, that's the good news when it comes to these cars. The less good news is that there's a new engine problem, because actually at Stellantis there's really a curse when it comes to combustion engines. After the problems with the 1.2, the Blue HDI, and also the 1.6, which have been somewhat less affected but still aren't the most reliable engines in the world. There is now a new recall for a reliability issue affecting the 1.5-liter gasoline engine. You know, the Firefly 1.5, the engine that Stellantis is really counting on in the coming years to replace the famous PureTech. So obviously, not all vehicles and not all versions of this engine are affected. It concerns exclusively the 160 horsepower hybrid version, which can be found, for example, under the hood of the Alfa Romeo Tonale. Stellantis is organizing a recall because on these engines, due to a combustion defect in the air-fuel mixture, it's possible that the connecting rods, which are a fundamental part of the engine because they connect the pistons to the crankshaft, could bend or even break. And if that happens, you can pretty much say goodbye to your engine. It's almost certainly a complete engine failure. When a connecting rod breaks, debris scatters throughout the engine, making repairs undesirable. The whole engine must be replaced. Rather than waiting and creating a new controversy related to Stellantis Group's engines, the company prefers to recall all the affected vehicles to perform an electronic reprogramming of the engine control unit, a recall that takes about 30 minutes at the dealership, which is supposed to optimize combustion in order to better preserve the engine's internal components. I think Stellantis is tracking down the last issues with this engine before rolling it out across all the brands in the group, We'll see if that's enough. In the meantime, that's it for today's update. I hope you found the video interesting. If that's the case, I'm counting on you to show it by leaving a like, subscribing for the next videos, and supporting the channel by clicking the join button. See you tomorrow for the next one. Bye.